Welcome to the Darkstream. I'm Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. Well, I realize that people are perhaps feeling a bit down, feeling a bit concerned about things, feeling a bit worried, and it's understandable. You know, you look at all the chaos that's going on, and you can see why people are nervous. You can see why people are confused. You can see why people are frustrated with the way that the God Emperor has not necessarily delivered on all of his rhetoric and so forth. And you look at the events, you know, the riots in London, the riots in Minneapolis, burning down half of Minneapolis, the riots in Stuttgart, right? But here's the thing, and here's why you need to be optimistic and you need to see that these are actually good signs. When everything is going smoothly, when everything is going easily, that's when the world is on the path to hell. For the last 60 years, things have been. And what has been happening? The West has been gradually declining into the current chaos, currently declining into non-existence, while the rest of the world is forced to submit to this corrupted perversion of what Western civilization is supposed to be. Let's look at this from a global perspective. Don't look at it from, you know, how your life happens to be at the moment or what the news in the United States happens to be. Let's look at it from a global perspective. Nationalism has risen and conquered in China. Nationalism has risen and is stronger than ever in Eastern Europe. Nationalism is on the rise in Russia. And the reason that the West is currently in chaos is because people are waking up. What we're seeing from the globalists is not what they do when they feel confident. Stirring up chaos is what they do when they want to try to create a situation where they can grab control again. They were in control since 1965 at a bare minimum, probably longer. But the United States, at least, has been on this path since 1965. The UK has been on this path since the Windrush. I don't remember exactly when that is. You know, some of you know about the situation that Big Bear is in with regards to Patreon and so forth. And there were people that were, you know, celebrating about the fact that Patreon was taking this issue to the courts, right? Well, here's the thing. This will perhaps put a lot of it in perspective for you. Okay, so the team had to put together, the Legion had to put together a timeline for the lawyer who's handling some of this stuff, right? Okay, so let's start this. Beginning in January 2020, on January 13th, Patreon challenges JAM's jurisdiction and the arbitrability of the claims. February 3rd, Jams rejects Patreon's challenge. Patreon sends letter to lawyer demanding withdrawal of 68 of the arbitrations. February 27th, Patreon asks Jams to suspend the assignment of arbitrators. Lawyer rejects, and then Patreon sends letter to Jams, March 11th. Patreon sends a letter to Jams to request stay of proceedings. March 12th, lawyer rejects it. March 12th, Jams rejects it. April 2nd, Patreon requests 30-day extensions due to COVID-19. April 30th, Patreon contacts case managers requesting further stays in geographical coordination. May 8th, an arbitrator rules against them on everything. May 12th, Patreon requests an administrative conference to implement coordination. May 21st, Jams rejects it. May 28th, Patreon requests regional coordination. Nobody even bothers to pay attention to it. Nobody responds to it. And finally, June 2nd, Patreon files suit in a California court and then runs back and asks for the arbitrations to be suspended on June 18th due to the court filing that they did. Now, perhaps you understand the pattern there. They keep trying to do the same thing over and over and over again, and it keeps failing. So they keep thrashing about, trying to find somebody somewhere, somehow, that will give them what they want. Now, it's not going to work. And we know it's not going to work. Why? Because the issue has been repeatedly ruled upon by numerous people. And it's very unlikely that a judge is going to rule any differently than literally every single other person, sorry, I had a mosquito, who has had cause to look at the facts. How does that relate to the globalist stuff? What we're seeing is an attempt by the globalists to try to preserve something. They've lost China. They've lost Russia. Why do you think that they were banging the drums for war with Russia and war with China? Because they lost them. And what's happening now, these desperate attempts to keep Trump, to keep the British nationalists at bay, because that's what all of this nonsense is. It's all attempts to prevent the nationalists from rising in the United States and rising in the UK, rising in places like Germany. All of it is a desperate attempt to, keep those countries from going the way of all these other places that they've lost. And the worst thing is that it keeps, the worst thing for them is that the failure of the faux Western system, the failure of the corrupted Western system, is the direct result of their actions, and people are seeing the success. Other countries are seeing the success of China, seeing the success of Russia. For 60 years, they had the moral high ground because they were trading on the illusion that they were offering Western civilization. But they weren't. It was always a bait and switch. And so nobody was interested. So, Tastio, you're banned for lying. There absolutely is a cancellation. And furthermore, this is not a place for tech support. Not that hard. So, anyhow, don't get down. Yes, it's very disappointing to realize that maybe we cannot live the easy, comfortable life that is just sliding slowly and ineffably down towards hell. You know, maybe that's disappointing. Maybe that's upsetting. You know, certainly it's not quite as nice. But the point is that life is about struggle. Life is about conflict. Life is about work. And, you know, yes, it would be nice perhaps to, if things could be easy forever, but that's not the way it is. And the easy life in the United States, and it's basically only been in the United States and to a lesser extent in Western Europe, that easy life is an aberration. That's not the way that most history is. And so what we need to do is prepare for it, embrace it, be ready for it, find joy in it. You know, once you get that taste for conflict in your mouth, once you get that experience of victory over the SJWs, over the wicked, over the people that are coming for you, you know, it gives you the energy and the enthusiasm to continue. You know, and it's exciting. You know, somebody had said the other day when we did a video on the you know, whatever the Patreon update was, they said that I sounded almost giddy. I was happy because the nexus, the crux of the matter, is finally approaching. You know, it's the decision point. And you know, that's always intriguing, win or lose. You know, it engages your mental faculties in a way that just sitting around indulging in the daily grind or indulging in the daily hedonism simply doesn't provide. You know, one of the legal legionaries said that he had learned more about the law in 3 months of working on stuff with the Legion than he'd learned in all of law school and in his first year of employment. You know, I feel like I attended college a second time over the past 2 years. And it's invigorating. It really is. Maybe it's even good for your brain. And the globalists know they're losing. You read the books by their intellectuals, Henry Kissinger, Francis Fukuyama. Their books now are all written about why they're trying to explain their failure. They're trying to explain why all the countries in the world are now looking to China rather than to the United States. Nobody believes anymore that the United States is the way to do things. How can you look at the burning cities, at the historical statues being torn down and say, hey, that's how we want to live? Nobody wants to live like that. And so globalism is not dead, but it is dying. And so don't be afraid of the conflict. The conflict means that events are moving our way at last. What was bad, what we should have been worried about, was when Starbucks began appearing on the corner of every street in Budapest and Beijing. That was the problem. Riots in the African-dominated section of Minneapolis, not a problem. Can this be spun as an argument for communism? It's not an argument for communism. Communism is absolutely retarded. Communism as both an economic and a political system is a complete failure. But here's the thing. As stupid as it is, as inefficient and ineffective as it is, communism is still better for a nation than globalism. Globalism is worse. Feminism is worse than communism. Mark keeps going on about people that I couldn't care less about. Don't ever bring up anybody here. I'm not interested in what Susie thinks. I'm not interested in what Becky said about Susie, and I don't care about all of that stupid internet drama. So if you happen to like somebody, fine, great, not interested. So that's why people are telling you to drop it, because I don't answer questions like that about anybody. So, Skydancer doesn't understand the point. Communism isn't stupid, it's evil. Yes. Well, no. Communism is stupid. You probably don't understand what communism signifies for market pricing. The impossibility of socialist calculation was determined by Ludwig von Mises back in the 20s. It was expanded by Friedrich von Hayek in the 50s. Communism is absolutely stupid. It is a horribly stupid way to try to arrange your economy. It's inefficient and it doesn't work. It is also evil. But ironically enough, it's not as evil and it's not as destructive to a nation as globalism. The United States is worse off than all of the former communist countries. Why? Because the United States is not American anymore. Poland, after all those years of communism, is still Poland. The United States is no longer American. That is harder to come back from. You can always fix your economy. You can always earn more money. But it's a lot more difficult when your country has been invaded. So, how dare you, Fighting Bear? How dare you? Jeff Godley says, what are your thoughts on X? Indicates, please publicly validate my personal likes and dislikes. I mean, there is an element of that, but, it's fine. I mean, it's not, it's natural, it's normal. It's just, I don't tolerate that anymore because it never leads anywhere positive. So, Waylon Smithers points out, the Civnats pretend that if there is an American nationalist uprising against non-American posterity rioters, it's a communist plan. It has nothing to do with any of that. Civnats are out of date. They're irrelevant. The shirt. This was a Father's Day present. It says, "I will crush your skull." Let's see here. I'm gonna back up a bit. Like a clam on my tummy. So, yeah, I have I have kids. So it's actually kind of funny because one of the kids was asked by someone, so what does your father do? They said, he's a Dark Lord. He Dark Lords. Always tends to lead to like strange looks and somewhat dubious questions from people. But yeah, it was apparently when this was found, there was great rejoicing in the house. Yeah, who would have thought, if you'd asked me if there was a shirt about otters and crushing skulls, I would not have I would not have imagined that, but it was pretty funny. Anyhow, will BLM push more white left-wingers towards nationalism? Yes, absolutely. They absolutely will. So, all right. Well, if anyone's got super chats, go ahead and let them fly. I do have something to show you. The Castalia library woman is been kind of amazed at the level of interest in the books. And just so you know, there are still a small number of missionaries left. If you subscribe, you can still arrange to do a catch-up and get one. However, if you already have a copy, it's very unlikely that we're going to have any extra ones available. So, but what I can show you is these are the mock-ups. If you're on Social Galactic, you know what this is going to be. But this is the Castalia library version of Awake in the Nightland. Lewis Jones says, keep crushing, thank you. And then this is, we're going a little different because it's gilded. It's not gilded, I mean it's silvered. And we wanted to go with this. And then this is the mock-up of the Libraria. Same design obviously, but it's in the goat skin with the midnight blue and the 22 karat gold. And of course, the book itself, Awake in the Nightland by John C. Wright, is absolutely fantastic. So, we're working hard at just attempting to improve what we're doing. And the next book after this, the designs that we're working on is for Dante's Divine Comedy. So if you want to get Awake in the Nightland, you're going to need to take out the subscription and then pay 3 catch-up payments, one for the first half of Divine Comedy, and then 2 to cover the Awake in the Nightland. It's a little confusing, I know, but it's how it is. And Plutarch is coming next. Books 5 and 6 are volumes 1 and 2 of Plutarch. And they're going to be great too. Let's answer some questions here. So keep crushing. Absolutely. Like clams on the tummy. And what's your opinion of The Wind in the Willows? Not one of my favorites. I kind of like all of the Anglo animal kid stuff in general. I'm well disposed towards it, but that was never a particular favorite of mine. Although I did play the mole in a play of it that we did at church for some reason, which in retrospect sounds a little strange. When will you officially denounce Owen for the second time? Oh, I denounce Owen twice before breakfast every day. I mean, what isn't there to denounce? He refuses to voluntarily turn over the goat skins. I mean, there are books out there book blocks, naked book blocks out there that remain unbound because of Owen shirking his duty. I denounce. I decry. Daniel Pereira subbed and bought the catch-up subs. Good for you. That's great. You're gonna love them. Any update on the Junior Classics? We're very close to making final decisions on the contents. We'll probably get the first ebooks out in July, but it's going to be a while before especially the leather ones are ready. We're not trying to get them done quickly. We're trying to get everything done right. And we're learning stuff as we go along, and we want to make sure that we get it right. Zach the Christian says, thanks for the show. You're very welcome. Karen Took the Kid says, you hire women? Good day, sir. I said good day. Yeah. It's always kind of funny that I get hammered with this presumption that I'm some sort of sexist when we've published a number of female authors. One of our Archaven illustrators is a woman. I've never had any issue whatsoever working with women on anything. My first 2 bosses I ever had were women. I believe that different people are suitable for different roles, obviously. Sometimes you want men for certain things, sometimes you want women for certain things. And I very much enjoy working with the woman that handles that stuff, does a fabulous job. I would have, at one point I would have gone so far to describe her as my right hand, as it were. Patrick McDonald says, thoughts on the French left coming down hard on iconoclast mobs. Why so much braver than the Anglo right? Well, because the French left has a long tradition of strikes, revolution, and acting up. The Anglo right is mostly famous for behaving and cleaning up and listening to the police. So it's not a surprise. Will it take longer for Germany to embrace nationalism due to German guilt from World War II? Well, it is taking longer than it should, but it's going to happen. The behavior of the migrants makes it inevitable. Wotan says, you've talked about Stephen Erikson's Malazan books in the past. Have you ever read any of Ian Esselmont's Malazan books, and if so, whose do you prefer? I have not read any of Esselmont's. I've read all of Erikson's. I find it interesting that he's picked it up. It's certainly an interesting world, but I've never read any of them, so I have no idea. I have no opinion on the new ones. Yeah, Erikson's stuff it's well written in some ways. It's very sloppily and incoherently written in others, but it's always interesting, even when it goes nowhere and makes no sense. Is Libraria $125 a month? Yes, Libraria is very expensive. The one thing that I will say is that it probably won't be long before those $250 books are going for well over $1,000. The first couple, there were only 50 made. I think with the Divine Comedy, we're going up to 75. What do you recommend from Arturo Reverte? My favorites are the Club Dumas and the Flanders panel. Let's see here. Well, and Eric Sanders says, did you ever watch The Dark Crystal? I never watched the movie. Frankly, those creepy Muppets always kind of freaked me out when I was a kid. But I did play the Apple II computer game, which ironically ended up working with some of the people who made that years later. How would you have won the Bush War if you were the Dark Lord of Rhodesia? By not surrendering. I mean, they could have easily won that if they'd wanted to, but they didn't want to. But honestly, I don't know enough about the African wars of the second half of the 20th century. I don't, you'd have to talk to Peter Grant about that. He was actually there. Has the price of mustard gone up? I have no idea. Is this some sort of reference to mustard gas or what? Poland not considered globalist, part of EU. Poland is not dominated by the globalists. The nationalism is very strong there. Yes, it's part of the EU, but the EU is breaking up. The EU is not going to be around in 10, 15 years. How closely, for crying out loud, how closely does the social sexual hierarchy for women reflect that of men? Don't know, don't care. Not everything that talks about men needs to immediately be somehow transformed into something about women. Okay? Female hierarchies are for women to sort out. I don't need to know about them. I don't care about them. I know that it has something to do with looks, the male romantic attachment, the paternal family attachment, and the sense of style. Those things all clearly factor in somehow, but I've never really been able to make head or tails of why one woman is the queen bee while the other is not. Heather Jones sends 20 Canadian. Thank you. Very kind. Eric Sanders asks, favorite Disturbed song? That's pretty easy. Overburdened. I think that's a great song musically. I think it's an interesting song thematically, and I think that it's a really well-written song lyrically. A relatively close second would be Indestructible. That's kind of my pre-soccer game. It's on my pre-soccer game routine. Part of it. Would you go so far as to say you disavow Mr. Benjamin for being a menace to our democracy? I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't quite see how he would menace democracy. Goats may not be cheap, but they don't really seem to be much involved in government. Bradley Hess does his thing. Thank you. What is the saddest fictional book you ever read? I genuinely don't know. Let's see here. Hang on. I'm going to turn this off for a second. Or not. I thought I was going to sneeze, so I didn't really want to impose that on everyone. Vox, will there be any sort of white racial unity in America, especially in the American South? Southerners today seem especially cucked and ascertain their identity from college football. Well, I think there will be eventually, to a certain extent. Whether it's enough, I don't know. I wouldn't put too much stock in the whole identity from college football, because if you notice, the college football identities tend to track the state and region pretty closely. What will it take for Castalia Library to get bindery rights to the Silmarillion? I don't know. We have to get more established. It'll happen. It'll come, but it'll take time. We haven't really gotten to the point where we're reaching out to people yet, because we need to, I think, get to a certain. We need to have our new website up. We need to have more books out and that sort of thing for people to trust us. Eric Sanders says, overburdened is great. Enough is at the top for me. Stone Dust Bear says, is Owen still hoarding all the goat skins? Sounds like a certain old bear is going to have to have his means of production seized in the name of spreading the written knowledge. Exactly. I like the way you think, Stone Dust Bear. Is Of Mice and Men a good book, or is it overrated? Well, both. It's a good book, but it's not a great one. Any chance for Castalia House to reprint some works from Lord Dunsany? I think they're public domain, but I could be wrong. I'm not a big fan myself. I think we'd be more likely to do Lovecraft. I think Lovecraft is a better writer than Dunsany. You're welcome, David Fisher. What's more important, race or culture? Well, genetics. Remember, race is not a very significant element in its own right. Race is just a signifier. That's like saying, what's more important, hair color or culture? The race is even less useful than hair color because there's fewer of them, right? And what matters the most are genetics, and genetics that matter are more fine-tuned than race. I'm not saying that race is insignificant, not at all. I'm saying that the significance level begins long before you get to race. I'm not saying that in a way to avoid criticism. What I'm saying is actually much worse than racism. It's more detailed, defined, and scientific than racism, because race is just a superset of the issues that actually matter. Will the universities in the West ever see a revival of true liberal learning or backlash against the Marxist monopoly? No, they've been converged. They're done. Sticks for Stone says, does Trump have the power to impose voter ID and restrict mail-in votes? Probably, but I don't know. How far down the line till Castalia Library does Maps of Meaning? I don't think that the universe will last that long. Could Castalia do the landmark Thucydides with all the maps and text in the margins? We would absolutely love to. If you can get us a contact there, someone to actually talk to, we would talk to them about that in a heartbeat. Catch-22 is wildly overrated. It has its moments, but it's not very good. Stellar J. Atkins says, saddest fictional book ever, Where the Red Fern Grows. Yeah, that's a good nominee. And pretty much all those loyal dog dies at the end. I mean, you could pick any one of those and it would be very reasonable. I mean, we're a dog household, obviously, and my wife absolutely refuses to see any movie like John Wick or something. It's like, just even the mention of a possibility of something bad happening to a dog, and she's out. Absolutely. So, is Tucker Carlson a stooge or is he genuine? I believe he's genuine. How important is sleep to you? I mean, it's vital, but you know, I don't happen to need a ton of it. Yeah, by the way, we've been very tardy getting the Patreon book this month out. We will get it out tomorrow. It is War Dogs 3. Apologies, etc., etc. I think, you know, one book that I thought of as being sad but in a beautiful way was Watership Down. I think that that's one of the great endings. Yeah, actually, Dr. Azume mentioned it too. You know, it's sad, but it's beautiful. You know, and the way that that Hazel's leadership is rewarded in the end is really touching. It's really beautiful. Yeah, Snipe just finished it. Says, great book. Thanks for recommending it. Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's one of my all-time best. Yeah, we'd love to do History of the Peninsular War. That's definitely a possibility. So, anyhow, well, that's all I've got. So keep the faith. Don't be afraid. And embrace the conflict. You know, this is the opportunity for the direction of the nation and the world to change. And that's a good thing. It's not good when we're just quietly and peacefully descending gently towards the pit. You know, this chaos, this disruption, this desperation on the part of the globalists is a sign for us to have hope. I'm Voxday. This is the Darkstream.